harlotry that was committed with the Moabites, even though there's a lot of harsh judgment inflicted on the Midianites. What did they specifically do? They joined themselves to Baal Peor. And it talks about, and they began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. However, another thing that is really needs to be highlighted, and this actually came up in the Sharia conference, is also they ate sacrifices. They didn't just join themselves to Baal Peor. They didn't just join themselves with the pagan women, but they also ate sacrifices. Specifically, as Psalms 106 verse 28 points out, and specifically they yochlu zivchei metim, and they ate sacrifices offered to the dead. Now, note 1c, there are 3 days concerning the Day of the Dead. There's the October 1st, which actually kicks off Night of the Witches. You got day 1 and day 2. I'm going to kind of not focus on Night of the Witches, but I do want to look at the second day too. So we got necromancy. Well, this is necrocandy. Okay? It says on the Day of the Dead, people build altars at the cemetery, making a path with candy and food to the altar at their home for the spirit to come, eat from the altar, and bless, in quotes, each family member. So, I want us to understand, well, that's just what happens in Mexico. Or that's just specifically a specific culture's tradition. When I first found out about this holiday several years ago, I was just bringing it up, like, oh, this is interesting. I just didn't know that it was that popular. It's been blowing up all over the place, specifically right down the street from us at the Nelson Art Gallery, where they literally have an altar. And I've been watching because I thought, well, maybe it was kind of a popular thing. Every year since I first taught this, every year they've been faithful to have this Day of the Dead expedition and have that altar. So I was like, well, maybe they got rid of it this year. Nope! On November 2nd, you see this whole adult youth workshop Day of the Dead. A workshop. Skeleton Prince, of course. Celebrate the annual Mexican holiday of the Day of the Dead. Visit the amazing altar installation in Kirkwood Hall to learn about the iconic symbols of the holiday, including, calicus, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, or playful skeletons. Then in the classroom, create your own colorful monoprints featuring calicus. Now, how did God feel about these altars? In Deuteronomy 12, you shall destroy all the places where the Gentiles and the nations which you shall dispossess serve their gods, and you shall destroy their altars. Well, Jason, that's some old covenant stuff, is not really that big of a deal. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, note 2b. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? What were this class? What was offered on the altar? Day of the Dead. What do they offer on the altar? All right. Note 2:1c. They build candy. Candy. Altars. So, you destroy their altars. Now, are not those who eat the sacrifices participants in the altar? That candy is offered to those idols. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and the table of demons. Now, here's why I'm putting this all together. Okay? Samhain, same thing. So when people talk about Samhain, or actually it's pronounced Samhain, which is interesting. Before there was the Day of the Dead, before there was Halloween, there was Samhain. And what happens is when you get into these conversations with people, because again, they try to compartmentalize it, this culture, that culture, and I'm trying to say it has nothing to do with ethnicity or culture. It has to do with the spirit behind that which is trying to penetrate every culture. Well, Halloween's different because that's the worshiping of the dead saints. So whether or not they're saints or not, but it's to the dead saint. Well, whereas Day of the Dead, it's more about your dead ancestors, but they're still dead. Samhain was still about the dead. What is the common denominator? Whether it's Samhain, whether it's Day of the Dead, whether it's Halloween, it's something about the dead. This is what necromancy is. This is fixation with the dead. You cannot, because what did he say? You cannot participate in this thing. You cannot separate celebration from participation. So once you say, I'm doing this for Halloween, you are now connected to Halloween. Once you say, I'm doing this for Day of the Dead, you are now connected to Day of the Dead. That's what worship or participation or celebration actually is. They're synonymous. So whether it's Samhain, Day of the Dead, and Halloween, all celebrate the dead. You just cannot get around this. So let's look at 1 Samuel 28. I'm highlighting verse 3 and verse 7. I can't wait until our Bible study when we actually get to 1 Samuel 28, which will probably be in 2035, should the Lord tarry. But 1 Samuel 28 is going to be a trip, and we can actually rip this whole thing apart. However, there's some important things. This is where Saul, who is backslidden, lost his anointing, lost his relationship with the Lord, because God is not speaking to him, is now trying to find other means. So he goes, so it says, now Samuel was dead, and Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits. Then Saul said to his servant, find me a woman who is a medium, that I may inquire of her. So, this is the backslidden king of Israel going to a medium. And what did Saul do? Saul disguised himself, put on other clothes, and came to the woman at night. What did he do? He disguised himself, put on other clothes, came to the woman at night because he knew what he was doing was not right. Now, this is what I call fancy necromancy. Okay, at Samhain, it was believed that the veil between the dead and the living was thinner, making it easier for spirits to cross over into our world. Out of fear of being recognized, people would wear costumes. Before the Day of the Dead, before Halloween, this stuff was going down already. So the whole, all these things that are just, it's just Halloween innocent fun. No, they have an origin. So Saul goes to this woman who is a medium to inquire of a familiar spirit, and specifically does what? Specifically disguises himself, asks her to do something. The woman said, whom shall I bring up? And he said, Samuel. Who is Samuel? The guy that was dead. Okay. Now, I call this a seance of Samuel. This is why when we get into 1 Samuel 28 in Bible study, it's going to trip you out. This is important. There are means of justification for all of these pagan holidays. When it specifically deals with Halloween, the justification is, well, what does Halloween mean? It's All Saints' Day. And this is why I'm always scratching my head with these Protestants who are boasting about their Protestantism and then adapting all these Catholic holidays, because it just literally it's not a Protestant idea. It's specifically about the saints. We all know Catholics pray to saints. That is just not, it's not a slander. It's not trying to make them, it's not about belittle. That's what they do. They pray to Mary. They pray to dead saints. All Hallows Eve was for the All Saints Days, where it was about the worship, celebration, or praying to dead saints. And they can try and clothe it or cover it up and be like, well, we're not actually worshiping. If you're talking to someone dead, it's necromancy. Knock it off. So the point that I'm trying to make here, Samuel, good guy or bad guy?
Good guy.
Very, 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 very good guy. One of the most integral people that God is, that you'll find all throughout Scripture. Now watch. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 5. God says you should not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of those that hate me. What's that note 4b? Let me see your note 4b to make sure I got this right. Yeah, note 4b. Look at that Hebrew word on your notes. Avot. Tonight I'm breaking out stuff I've never broken out before. The Hebrew word avot, okay? Specifically right here. This is what you're looking at. It's on your note 4b, so pay attention, okay? Visiting the iniquity. This is where we get the difference between sins and generational curses. To the third and fourth generation. Visiting the iniquity of the Avot, the fathers. Samuel would be what we would today would consider a saint. Samuel would be today what we consider a father. So the justification of All Hallows Eve through the Catholic Church, but this is about the dead saints. This is about the dead father. This word, fathers, avot. Now, when you look at Leviticus 20, verse 6, note 4c, it says, the soul that turns to those with, in the English it says familiar spirits and wizards, I will cut off from his people. The word for a familiar spirits has literally the same root word. The aleph, the vav, and the tav. If you look at note 4b, the Hebrew word, and you look at note 4c, the Hebrew word, it's literally the exact same root, avot. Because people have questioned, what does familiar spirit? What does it mean? And I thought it was very fascinating that it has the exact same root as the fathers. What's the point that I'm trying to make here? This is what I call relative worship. Why, when you're watching these crossing overs and all these psychics and mediums, what are they doing? They're trying to connect with their fathers. They're trying to connect with their ancestors. Everything that God said, leave alone. Knock it off. Saul was not contacting a wicked soul, but a righteous saint. Isn't that what all Saints Eve is about? It's about worshiping these righteous saints, praying to these good saints. No matter how you dress it up, praying to, communicating with, or celebrating dead relatives is ancestral idolatry. So everything about Halloween is not just pagan and occultic, it's idolatry. So that's why I'm just floored with Protestants just sucking this in whole. What is the purpose? It means All Saints Day. What do they do? Well, we're worshiping stuff. They literally, because of, by the way, it used to be in May when they had All Saints Day. They literally moved it to November 2nd to coincide with the Day of the Dead and Samhain. So they knew exactly what they were doing. By the way, if you see this is the movie Coco. What's it about? Look. Academy Award winner, Best Animated Feature, Best Original Song, Golden Globe Award winner, because you got to get the children, right? That's what everyone says. Well, this is about the children. Exactly. The devil is saying it's about the children. Take your children as far away from anything occult related. Specifically when it comes to those generational spirits, those avot, those familiar spirits that want to be connected to your children. So something else that the Lord dropped on me this week. In connecting all of these things, the Samhain, the Halloween connection, and here's why I'm breaking this down on these notes, because you have no excuse after tonight. This thing is so cut off, so cut and dry. I've never worked harder on a type of Halloween sermon than I did this week. To make it clear. And I ran through every justification someone could possibly say, well, this is why it's okay, this is why it's not a big deal. You're dealing with familiar spirits. The whole root is demonology. And then he brought this up. In Genesis 6, it talks about the Nephilim. So there's people who have asked me about this, so I want to put this in context. It says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children. People have tried to explain this away, make it something like, well, actually it's about the line of Seth, and it's actually people that... No. What was happening was there were the rebellious angels that came and cohabited with women, and they bore children. That's in your Bibles. That's real. This is why, all of a sudden, what is the most famous story in the Bible? David and Goliath. And Goliath was a giant. They bore children to them. Hold on. Well, what do you mean? How do you mean Nephilim giant? What are you talking about? Numbers 13. You're looking at the reason why the children of Israel lost the promise, except for Joshua and Caleb, was because they went to the promised land, they saw the glory, they saw this, they saw all of the things that they wanted to see. Sorry, Jerry, I have to call you out. You've been asking me about Nephilim for like 5 months. I finally breaking it down, and you're late and missed it, so I got to call you out. It's like, oh yeah, Jerry, yeah. So all of a sudden, the reason why the children of Israel, they bring back the fruit, they see the rock, and what do they see the land? Giants. That's why these giants. But hold on, these giants have a specific designation. Numbers 13. They gave a bad report of the land. They spied out saying, we saw the Nephilim, the children of Anak. By the way, Anak is also another Hebrew word for giants, are part of the Nephilim. So this is why when you're reading Genesis 6 and you're like, okay, the Nephilim and the fall, you're not really sure what's going on. They bore children. That's where the giants come from. And we became like grasshoppers in our sights. Note 5C. Now watch. Deuteronomy 2:20. Yahweh speaking to the children of Israel. I'm not going to give you any land of the sons of Ammon because I've given it to the sons of Lot. It is also regarded as the land of the Rephaim. And that's what we're going to kick the doors in tonight. The Rephaim. Some of you, you're a little hip. You've heard the Nephilim deal. You kind of know about the Anakim, whatever. But the Rephaim, whole nother level. But hold on. Who are the Rephaim connected to? Are people great and tall as the Anakim? Who are the Anakim? The giants. So this is what I was spelling out, carving out all week. So, Nephilim, Rephaim, so I'm zooming, aiming. The Nephilim, the Anakim, and the Rephaim are giants who are the offspring of fallen angels. This is why, when you're reading your Bible, and I understand this may not be 100% ironclad or so on, but it's ironclad because you can find a little loophole here. But when people have a problem, when Yahweh said, yeah, when you go into that land, you take out everybody. Why would God be so harsh? Even the women and the children, why would God be so harsh? Because most of them were actually not just quote-unquote human, they were Nephilim. Conquesting the land of Canaan, Judges, Og of Bashan, Nephilim, giants. Like that's a real thing because we live in this bubble here in the Western Gentile culture. We don't understand the supernatural events that are going on most of the planet. The devil is wreaking havoc. And when you take Genesis 3 literally, the enemy, the battle was not just between God's seed, the woman's seed, but also the devil's seed. So then, 3 chapters later, here comes the sons of God, the fallen angels, messing with the women, creating a seed. Giants. But the word, you got the Nephilim, you got the Anakim, but this Rephaim, this is where it's going to take a little twist. With Halloween, like this again, this is why I understand the confusion on Christmas, I understand the confusion on Easter. I never understood the confusion on Halloween. Everything you see, ghosts, goblins, witches, whatever, but I have no idea how we could just overlook this, okay? Literally, these stores are everywhere. Spirit Halloween. Where is Jesus in any of that? Okay, I don't even see a saint in that. When have you gone to a Halloween party, and even for those who are justifying what's about the saint, and all of a sudden, hey, look, you're dressed up as the Apostle John. Like, this just never happens. It always leads to an occultic measure. It always brings, at somewhere, there will be an occultic, satanic, demonic element in this thing. But that's on purpose. Rephaim, connected to the Nephilim, connected to the Anakim. But there's something that the Rephaim is that the other two are not. A familiar passage in Isaiah chapter 14 is where we find the first phrase where Hallel ben Shachar, or Lucifer, son of the morning. In verse 9, Sheol from beneath is excited over you to meet you. It arouses you, the spirits of the dead. Verse 14, how have you fallen from heaven, Lucifer, son of the morning? Verse 14, how are you fallen from heaven, Lucifer, son of the morning? Go back to verse 9. Sheol from beneath is excited over you to meet you. It arouses you, the spirits of the dead. The Hebrew word for spirits is Rephaim. So now we're not just talking about those giants. We're not talking about just natural people. Oh, wait a minute. The Rephaim were also spirits. Because this is what I'm referring to as Nephilim offspring. Note 6b. Rephaim, unlike Anakim and unlike Nephilim, Rephaim actually has a dual meaning. Not only does Rephaim mean giants, okay, because it can refer to the giants, that's the passage that we looked at in Deuteronomy 2, but it also refers to the spirits of dead giants, also known as demons. We conflate fallen angels with demons. Not the same thing. Lucifer, yes, he's a fallen angel, but he wasn't a demon. What happens when you die? Your spirit goes someplace. Why? To be absent from the body if you're saved, to be present with the Lord. Or, if you're not saved, you go to that other hot place. Okay? God forbid. But what if you're not human? What happens when all those giants were exterminated? Their spirits had to go someplace. Why do you think a spirit always is craving a body? Well, the cats and the pigs, because they used to have a body. This is why all the first century Jews in the Second Temple, all that stuff, they all understood where demons come from. Everyone understood that they were the spirits of the dead giants. Isn't it interesting why those spirits are extremely stronger than normal? Supernatural strength, supernaturally louder. It's very interesting that they come from these giants. But it's even interesting that the Rephaim always had a dual meaning. So here's where we're going with this. Doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter what people, there is an enemy, a supernatural enemy. It's always been a spiritual battle. These spirits, whether they're the fallen angels, whether they're the Rephaim, whether they're the demons, whatever you want to call them, they want access in the human realm. Period. So there's nothing more exciting for the enemy to cultivate holidays. Not just where the witches and the Wiccans and the pagans get down, but how much more is it? A slap in Yahweh's face when God's people start adapting the principles that have been used by pagans and witches for thousands of years for the purpose of worshiping their gods. In Isaiah chapter 8, verse 19, it says, when they seek those that have familiar spirits. And again, more and more every year, it's more psychics, it's more mediums, it's more occultism, it's more death. When they say, seek those that have familiar spirits and wizards, should not a people seek their God? The same problem. They might not have had Halloween back in the day. They didn't need Halloween. They just had occultism. They had spiritualism. They had New Age. They had all types of stuff. But whether it's back in the day, in Isaiah's day, 700 years before Christ, or whether it's today, the same problem. Demonology. This is an ancient battle. When they say, seek those that have familiar spirits and wizards, should not a people seek their God? In Mark 12, verse 27, Jesus says he is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So remember that note, I believe it's 2C. I don't care if you're talking about Halloween. I don't care if you're talking about Samhain, Samhain, where it comes from. I don't care if you're talking about Day of the Dead. What's the common denominator? They're all celebrating the dead. They're all talking about the dead. That is not the belief